my grounding piece around leadership is always be yourself. So you don't need to adapt to the environment. If that's actually what you have to do, that means that probably that culture isn't right for you. You haven't found your your place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, of course you need to adapt how you approach different things, but I think you can always do that from a place of authenticity, and that's really important to me.
If you've ever wanted to learn how to hold your own in rooms where the loudest voice usually wins, how to lead with confidence when you're the outlier, or how to stay true to yourself instead of just fitting in, then this episode's for you. Today's guest is Lizzy Geremia. She's the Group Brand and Culture Director at one of the nation's most trusted companies, the Reece Group, which are the largest supplier of plumbing and bathroom products in the country. She also happens to lead the Breakthrough Innovation Group, a suite of digital and creative agencies that support the trade industry nationwide. Altogether, Lizzy leads more than 100 people in what's still a pretty blokey industry. But she does it with clarity, strength, and a way of leading that never compromises who she is. Here's my conversation with Lizzy Geremia. Now, Lizzy, I've known you from our past interactions when we worked together and when I've done some work for you. I would say you're somebody who's upbeat. You definitely have a possibilities mindset. I call you like superwoman, supermom because you're a mom, you're a wife, and you've already had an amazing career. But I've also heard you described as a smiling assassin. Now that's the kind of leader who can spark change just with a little bit of a grin. I've also seen you make impact in a room without having to raise your voice. And what I love about you is that you asked a lot of questions that often people will avoid. But I'm curious, smiling assassin, what do you make of that description?
I mean, I don't love it. And listen, no one's ever called that to me to my face, but there was actually when I first started at Reece, I was brought in as we were about to do a big acquisition in the US, which was all obviously very confidential at the time. And so I was, I just kind of like introduced myself to a few people, found a desk and sat down and started asking lots of questions. And obviously there were some people that thought something's not quite right here, something's up. And apparently there was a guy that said, "Oh yeah, she's the smiling assassin. I've seen her before." And listen, I think some of that might just be the fact that I do I do try and go in and make change happen. I love fixing things that are broken or improving things or seeing where the opportunity is to shift thinking and create progress, I suppose. But I try and do that in a way that brings people on the journey. And I'm a true believer that you can have fun while making big changes, no matter how hard they are. And if you do that in an authentic way, and I'm naturally a positive, glass half full kind of person, then I think that means that you're bringing your whole self to that change as well. So I think that's maybe where it came from. I mean, people say your brand is what people say about you behind your back. I wouldn't have picked smiling assassin, but um, but I'll take it.
And I think that's what stood out to me always is the energy that you brought. You've got that curiosity, and you are like anytime we've worked together, it's always about how do we make progress, how do we evolve. Um, but I don't think that approach comes out of nowhere. So what I'd love to do is go back and not to your resume or your LinkedIn profile, but I actually want to go back before that because I'd love to know a little bit how you've become who you are. Um, so if we went back, what was it like growing up for you? What was your childhood like?
Um, I had a pretty good childhood. I was very lucky. I was brought up in a very loving home. We had a bit of change and tough times during it. One of the biggest changes that certainly changed my life quite substantially as a child was that for about a year, my family uprooted from the UK and moved to Hong Kong. And that really opened up my world around how differently people live and the different types of worlds there are out there after having lived in quite a small town before that. So I think that really made me realize that there was a big wide world out there and full of interesting and exciting places. And I remember when we found out that we actually had to move back to the UK early, I was absolutely distraught because I was loving my new life. And
How old for you? How
oh, I
old?
was 11 when that happened. Um, and then, I mean, listen, at the in the early 90s, as I was finishing up school and going to uni, and the UK went through a massive recession, and my dad lost his job and was out of work for quite a long time. That had a big impact um, on our family, but also it was a point where everyone kind of rallied together and had to really take responsibility. And that was just the time as I was leaving home and moving and going to university. And I think that was a real life lesson in suddenly having to look after myself, run my own budget, be really careful, and acknowledge the fact that my parents probably couldn't support me as much as I would probably expecting them to be able to. So I think that teaches you a level of resilience. Also, I moved around quite a lot as a child. I think I went to 5 different schools all up. But I think that gave me great skills on how to quite quickly build relationships, understand who I wanted to be in different groups, and kind of understand quite a lot about myself. So I don't know whether that's naturally that way inclined, but I think certainly being in lots of different experiences as a child has kind of helped me manage change quite effectively as I've I've grown. Yeah.
I kinda as you were saying that, I was like, "Oh, did that come natural for you? Was it easy?" But in typical Lizzie style, it's like, "Yeah, that's just I just made it work." But because you would have moved countries, say when you go to Hong Kong, you move to a
Yeah.
country with different language. Then you're loving it there. Then you got to come back, and then you go into 5 different schools, multiple schools. What did you find hard? Like, what were what part of that? Some of that must have been difficult for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the changing schools, the hardest bit there was that actually my education suffered quite a lot. So, and I was already young for my year. So I did have to play catch up quite substantially when I started hitting kind of my strides in senior school. And listen, I was never the top of the class, but I worked really hard and I wanted to do well for myself. So I think that's naturally who I am. I'm quite a conscientious self-driven person. But that was a bit of a wake up call that, oh God, I've actually got to really push myself. If I want to be successful. I remember there was a fear that I was going to have to go back a year, and I really didn't want to do that. I think I was about 13 at the time. And so I was like, right, I've got to double down here and finish well, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, yeah, as you say, I kind of probably took quite a lot of it in my stride, but I've always kind of run my own race. I haven't really been too worried about what other people are thinking or where other people are in their journey either.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But what I'd love to know as well is when you were younger and you had time to yourself. So school, obviously, you applied yourself.
Yeah.
What would we have seen you if there was this documentary we were watching about you?
Oh,
Uh,
oh, it would be pretty boring.
I didn't know you did hot fun. But what did we see you doing after school on the weekends? Where did you find yourself drawn to?
Well, so I was a drama kid. So I've got absolutely I was brought up in a very sporty household with 2 very sporty brothers. And their weekends were rugby and squash and cricket. And I literally can't catch a ball. So that was never going to be my direction. And I was about probably 12 or 13 when I really got into drama. And while I went to quite a small school out of town, I mean, and some of those are still my dearest friends today. I joined a Saturday morning drama group and put on plays and was with that posse. And yeah, which was really great. But I think it gave me an outlet outside of school as well. And yeah, just really enjoyed just everybody working together as a team and creating something as well.
You remember one of your favorite roles or play that you did?
Oh God, I don't know.
I just want to picture this.
Oh no, you don't want to. Listen, I mean, I was in all sorts of plays. I was in Shakespeare stuff. 12th night at uni, I went to Edinburgh and was in the Edinburgh Festival, in which sounds completely weird, a musical about the Holocaust. It was, I wouldn't say it was the most uplifting drama, but we won a couple of awards for that. And then, did all the usual stuff, Malone, Wizard of Oz, all, all that kind of stuff too. So yeah, it was good. It was good fun. And I've met some really lovely friends outside of school that are still friends to this day through that.
All right. So maybe I'm starting to learn a little bit. Maybe this is explains, yeah, it definitely explains how you become who you are. Now, you said earlier something like you've kind of done your own thing. You've gone down your own path. And I know you've often said how important authenticity is, but being yourself,
Yeah.
um, especially when at times it probably would just be easier to blend in. So knowing, well, learning about what it was like growing up, but also knowing about your career, I imagine staying true to yourself hasn't always been easy. Can you think of a moment where like staying true to yourself came at a cost, or at least it felt like a risk? You weren't 100% comfortable, but always.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, for I mean, I never thought I'd end up here, but for the first 10 years of my career, I was pretty much in finance and banking. Um, and I had a very much of a wake up call towards the end of that part of my career where I was in a very kind of political um, environment within a bank in Australia. And I remember having a performance review with my manager, and my manager said to me that um, I was too forgiving and should not accept failure and move on, that I needed to hold grudges and um, and make sure that I kept those grudges. And I actually remember coming home that night. I wasn't very happy in the role anyway, but I remember coming home that night and just saying to my husband, "Oh my God, I think I've got to leave. I can't stay there anymore, because actually I'm being asked to be something that is fundamentally not who I am." And I think one of the things that I've always tried to do quite naturally is just be very authentic and be stay true to my values and who I am. And I actually thought I don't want to become that person. I don't want to be someone that doesn't have the curiosity around why things haven't worked and help people work through that. Um, and yeah, I actually then that was pretty much the catalyst. Within 3 months, I'd left and had moved roles.
How how did you respond in the moment? Because that's maybe it's just typical of that, maybe of that culture or the environment there. But too nice, hold grudges. Uh, yeah, how do you respond to that in the moment? Can you remember what you did?
Uh, I mean, I tend to, in the moment, with anything like that, I mean, all the way through, your career, you have moments where it hits a button for you. Um, but I think composure is really important in those moments. So it's more that I kind of took it on. I said, "Okay, explain that to me. What do you mean by that? What do you expect to see from me?" Um, and kind of I mean, it was captured as a development opportunity for me. Um, and it was more that then, I think sometimes you have to let things sit with you for a bit. I mean, my gut reaction was, this doesn't feel right. And I'm very led by, I've got quite strong EQ anyway. But my gut reaction was just like, I'm being asked to be something I'm not. And and then it's also then how true can you be to yourself? I mean, I think in your 20s and your career, you tend to take, a lot of that. I mean, I say to people I work with now in their 20s, work in lots of different companies, understand what cultures are right for you, understand what leaders are right for you, some stuff's going to feel good and some stuff isn't. But when it doesn't, act quickly and actually pull it. And I mean, I think I've probably stayed too long and for it to have got to that point, really. But yeah, I think as long as you learn something about yourself, and and then I very much purposely after that was like, right, I'm going to be really purposeful about the kind of organizations I want to move into next. And wanted to really ensure that I was looking at purpose-driven organizations that I thought would be more aligned with my values as well, which is why I ended up at Bupa at the time.
So so that obviously made an impact on you. Um, you've taken that and it helped you reflect what's important to you, and then it's impacted what you've done, your decisions that you made moving forward. So you're now in a very senior role. You've worked and led. You're seeing it as a leader. You're one of those people that on meetings, like, oh, Lizzie's there, or if you're walking down the hallway, people might say, oh, that's one of the big bosses. But
Well,
yeah, how do you help others now lead or be themselves, like not have to worry about putting that armor or being somebody they're not?
well, I mean, I think sometimes as if you are the most senior person in the room, it's creating as much as you can an autonomous environment. So making sure that you're seeking out the quietest person in the room and asking what they think. And also by saying that you don't have the answers, I think is really important. I think, there was definitely a point in my early 30s that I realized that actually it's great not to know the answers, and to say I don't know is actually really powerful. And much better to say than, try and fudge something when you think someone thinks that you should know something that you don't. And I think being really open about that and sharing that is really important. So I think it's how you can create an environment where people feel like they can be their best. And a lot of that's around trust and creating a safe environment within that. And I think also I'm just myself. Like if I don't know something, I say I don't know something. If I know someone else does that's much more junior than me, I'm like, I need your help. Help me make this better. And empower people to do that too. So yeah, I think it's just being really transparent that there's so much that all of us don't know, and we're all just trying to work it out together, really.
Yeah, that's great advice. Um, what I heard was, um, it's the people that are quiet, ask them because they probably got something good, and asking
Yeah.
people for help as well,
Yeah.
and demonstrating that you don't have to have you don't know all the answers and you need their help.
Uh,
Um, and then that just role models that it's okay to be like that.
yeah.
Um, you've also worked in some very male-oriented industries, right? Banking, insurance, plumbing. I don't know if we get any more blokey than
Yeah.
that, or um, now for some people that it feels exhausting or intimidating. For you, what's that been like?
I think they've all been very different cultures. I mean, even I worked in two different banks. I worked at Barclays in the UK and NAB here. Barclays at the time when I worked there, and what's interesting actually about the roots of Barclays is that it was established by Quakers, and if I don't know if you know anything about Quakers, but the whole community is about everyone supporting one another. So there was kind of like this strange foundation
What is
bank.
Quakers? When I think of Quakers, I come Missouri.
It's a religion.
Oh, it's a release.
So, but it's all about kind of community led and support. And while it was now this huge, big global bank, the roots of it were just all about kind of friendship and kinship, I suppose. And when I worked at Barclays, you'd get into the lift in Canary Wharf and everybody would say hello to each other. And there was just this general sense of kind of we're all in it together. And what was really interesting culturally then when I moved to Australia and my first day at NAB, I'm standing in the lift, everyone's pretending no one can see each other. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is a very different culture. And then when I kind of said, "Oh, it doesn't feel like, after a couple of months, there doesn't feel like there's the same kind of connection that I had where I worked before." And someone said, "Oh, well, that's because we're really big, and it's really hard in big, complex organizations to create a sense of community." And I was like, well, NAB at that point was like 20, I don't know, maybe 30,000 people, and Barclays was 80,000 people. So I was like, well, I don't know if that works. That's also where you start getting curious about culture and what makes different places work in different ways, and what the accepted symbols and norms of how you work together. So I think, um, yeah, I don't necessarily think, both of those were male dominated. There was always many more men in the room than women. I have traditionally worked in quite a lot of communications and marketing departments, so that tends to be the most female orientated area. Um, and I think you can fall into the trap of trying to become one of the blokes, which I think is really dangerous, actually. And you do see that still, that there's a front that people put on. I've always really resisted that, and have just, and maybe that's just because I'm quite confident in myself, is just be myself in those rooms. And I think also be really, really focused on when you should have a voice, and backing yourself to have that voice. And that's not always particularly easy. Sometimes you need a great leader to go for it. Um, and I'd sometimes in those environments, particularly earlier on in my career, give myself a challenge. Like, I think you should never be invited to a meeting unless you're going to say something, right? But you don't want to say something just for the sake of saying it. So that's where the questions come in, right? So it's like, oh, okay, my challenge in this meeting is there's lots of senior people, there's lots of male people, but I'm going to ask one great question and give myself. And then the more you do that, the easier it becomes. I think then when I was a booper, it was actually it was swung completely the other way, and there was a lot more women than men. And actually, at that point in my feedback for my personal development, I was told that I was being too hard, um, and needed to dial some of that back, which was like, wow, oh my God, I've got like swung the opposite spectrum. And then I think at Reece again, I think it's not necessarily about being male dominated. I think it's about the culture that's created. Reece is really a family story, and the roots of it is a small entrepreneurial family founded their business. And I think that has created a culture of autonomy, and there's a leanness to the business where actually everyone has quite a lot of responsibility, so you have to back each other. And so I think the culture is very strong, and the values are very much embedded. So I think that's where um you know, underpinning yourself on the purpose and the values of the organization helps you navigate some of that. Listen, I've very rarely thought, well, I am a lot. I'm the only woman in the room. I try not to think of that, but sometimes I actually think it's more that you acknowledge to the men that they realize that you're the only woman in the room. And that sometimes can change the dynamic, because that's just that unconscious bias that they don't realize that you might be different. But I think that goes for anybody's diversity, is that you just got to make sure that you are very aware of the difference, and that difference really adds value to the conversation, as well. And so that's actually such a positive thing, that difference is in the room. So yeah, I suppose it doesn't really answer your question, because I think, yes, I've worked in lots of male dominated environments, but I think actually it's more that the cultures have been very different where I've worked, and then it's how you navigate those cultures and find cultures that really work for you, and um, what's going to get the best out of you.
Yeah, that strikes me that you've either gone for, found them on purpose or by accident, but the cultures that work for you. You talked about race being family, uh,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. But so this is gonna sound stupid. I'm a guy, and I couldn't imagine, like, when I go into a room, there's probably things that I don't even think about, and I wonder if it's the same. Like, I wouldn't think, oh, there's 7 guys and 1 female in the room. You've been doing this, if you're the only female in the room right now. What advice would you give to men, to males? Um, what would you like them to better understand for people in that situation?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's so generalized when you say, what would you tell all the men what to think? Because I think everyone comes from such a different place first, in terms of their upbringing and how they've worked. And I think it's more that you're conscious around the difference that's around the table. It's probably what I'd say. So in big, in important meetings where it might be getting very um where you want to be really productive, it's how do you get how do you create an environment that gets the best out of everybody that is there? And I think a lot of that is to do with who is running that session or that meeting or that program of work. And sometimes it's giving them the feedback to say, are you, there's better ways to create that environment for people. Um, and acknowledging what they might not be seeing. But I think that goes, I just think, everybody's got their shadows. So I think it's how we support each other around and create an environment where people go, I know I struggle with X. Hey, can you have my back on that one? Um, and um, and yeah, I mean, I think it's just that everybody should have an acknowledgement of what the difference is in the room and actually challenge yourself to say, have we got the right diversity or the right people in the room as well? And I'm not meaning male, female, or background. It's sometimes actually knowledge or expertise. Um, you know, Particularly like in customer-led organizations, have we got the person close to the customer in the room? Or are we speaking for them? And have we got the right kind of insight, or are we really sure about that we've defined the problem that we're trying to solve? And I think sometimes that can focusing on actually really understanding what the problem is and what insight got you to that problem helps you have a different conversation as well. So I haven't properly answered your question, but
No, no, but you're giving some insight, and I think you said something that resonated with me that, um, like everybody will look at those situations differently based on how they've been brought up, the different experiences.
yeah,
Um, and I've often had people who've worked with me, people that have been part of the teams that I've led, um, and they've talked about the challenges that women face in the workplace. And I've always gone, well, why? And I think that's because of the upbringing. Like our family was just everybody's the same.
yeah,
You look at certain people, but um, I, so that's why I'm curious to understand what it is. Because in my mindset, it's like there's probably unconscious bias I'm not even aware of. Because hence the term.
yeah. Well, that's unconscious bias, right? That's exactly what it is.
And that's where it's like if there's any I don't know if there's tips or ways to uncover those unconscious biases other than getting feedback or having the discussions like you just said, which also makes me think about like that's a different kind of I'll use the word power, right? There's hard power where it's banging the hands on the smashing the desk or whoever's speaking the loudest, um, or just whoever's got the most power, positional power. That's it. That's how it's used. But I think you're a master of what I would call more the soft power. Um, what do you wish more leaders understood about soft power, especially in those environments where maybe that's not what gets rewarded initially?
Yeah, well, I think it is all about empathy, really. So I think,
What does
um,
empathy mean to you? What's your definition?
so I would say what it means to me is the awareness of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, and seeing something from somebody else's perspective. Because actually, sometimes it's really dangerous if you've got a very, very strong opinion. You're usually not seeing the the other point of view. Um, so, I mean, I think the big thing there when someone is using a lot of hard power is actually there's a lot of shadows in that, because you can become very blinkered. Um, and I think the nuance of empathy is the fact that you're ensuring that you've got all points of view or the important points of view or the opposite of the opinion and ensuring that that is still helping you get to an outcome. And I mean, often I think that is around, I mean, at Reece, we're really customer led. And it, it's kind of, you don't say the customer's the heart of everything we do. You get laughed out of town at Reece because everyone will be like, yeah, what else are we all here for? Um, but so often it's like, what are we all doing this for? What customer problem are we solving? How is this going to help the trade industry do better? And I think if that immediately makes you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I think if you've got a really dominating hard power leader in a room, sometimes that's not the moment to get them to think differently. Actually, time and space and pausing, and then choosing a different moment to then give the feedback, is probably more valuable, because sometimes that makes people more set in their ways, as well. No. But often the first reaction of people in hard power isn't the final reaction as well. Sometimes you can give feedback and, great leaders, if they do live with hard power, the great leaders that do also reflect, which I think is really important.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about another topic that's important, and I think you said this word before, but I want to come back to. It's quite a common. I work with teams, so trust always comes up,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the best performing teams have the higher levels of trust. Um, Now, I'd like to ask you. I want to talk about trust, but not in a, let's just say, in a motivational message on a shirt kind of way,
Hmm.
but more like what the real issues with trust. What What do you do when you have to build trust with someone that you don't naturally click with? Because I get that often. It's like, well, what if you don't like them? And I've got a view on friendships in the workplace. It's
Oh, yeah. You don't have to
so,
like them. Yeah. You just have to know how to get on with them. Yeah.
yeah, we have to work that. So what? So it sounds like you've had that maybe once or twice. But what do you do to build that trust with somebody you don't naturally click with?
Um, I think one of the best questions that it's not mine, but I've stolen, is when you are hitting that roadblock of feeling like, oh God, I don't think they're in my corner, or there's tension here. It's actually saying, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Because that immediately takes all of the heat out of the situation. And also, you're kind of showing your hand by saying, "Hey, I don't. Yeah, it feels like we're not agreeing, but there must be a reason why you're so strongly think differently to me."
Mm.
And I think that's a really powerful question that completely can shift the dynamic of a relationship. So I think, yeah, I mean, it's easy to say, it's harder to do. Sometimes it is personality, and you think, and often it's because actually you're driving to different outcomes. And I think that's why just using real simple, practical kind of design thinking approaches to helping to solve problems builds trust. Because if you start with insight, then you're all aligned on what problem you are solving. You There will be alignment around then how you get to the outcome that you want to achieve. Um, and sometimes it's acknowledgement that people are coming from different places, right? I think one of the things that in my career I've certainly learned over time is you become more and more effective at working in the grey.
Mm.
If you think things are black and white, actually that tends to be where conflict happens. And often you might want to get from A to B, but to get there is, quite a journey. It's never linear. Um, and all of those things are about seeing things from other points of view. But I think listen, recently I've had some work that I've had to do with one of my teams around trust. Trust was really broken in the team, and it wasn't a team I was directly leading, but I had to come in and support them. And actually, one of the things there was that they weren't having the conversation in the room. And I know this is something that you'd come up against with the work that you do, Adrian. But it was all about saying they're aligned in meetings and then leaving the meeting and all the side conversations happen. Um, but actually, we did a piece. I mean, it's all really crude stuff, but we did a questionnaire using the Lencioni model around the questions of um, high functioning teams. And together, the score was crap, right? So it basically said we're not functioning.
Yeah.
But sharing that immediately was like, we have a problem. And we're actually, you know what? We're all aligned that we've got a problem.
It's almost relieving
And we need
to just get that on the table.
yeah. And this environment that we're all working on in at the moment is shit. Like no one's enjoying what they're doing. This is just hard. This is hard work. It's a slog, right? Are we all committed to the fact that we want to make this better? And I think then actually getting it out in the open and then going, right, we're going to work towards building trust. But then from that, there's principles that we're all going to have to um, live by to enable that. And one of the initial principles was don't have the side conversations. If you're not aligned, say it in the room. And a couple of times that didn't happen. And, I was having people coming to me going, Lizzy, so-and-so's, I know they've been saying this outside of the meeting. And I was like, right, have you gone and had that conversation with them? Why are you coming to me? Go and have that conversation.
I love what you did with that, Lizzy, was and this happens, I hear about this all the time, and there's an urge for the leader to want to fix the problem or weigh in.
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Just tell them to come talk to me and we'll get that sorted." But what you did is you actually didn't get into the content, you coached behavior. And that's something that I see the better leaders do that. They don't get sucked into the drama, who's right, who's wrong. Oh, and because that's one perspective, but the very best leaders did what you did is they just go, like, what are you gonna do about it? Like what and then you contributing, what's the behavior that needs to change to make this better?
Yeah. And of course, that is a brave conversation to have, right? And it's hard. And listen, I put my hand up. I have avoided those conversations sometimes myself. But also what I've learned is the longer you avoid it, the worse the problem gets.
So why would you think of one of them? Think of one of them right now. Like I could
Oh God, I don't know.
there might be one from this week, there might have been one from 10 years, depending on what was the fear?
I mean, I know one of my biggest shadows is that I I kind of don't like upsetting people. So I knew by having the conversation, they wouldn't like what I was going to say. And that's something that I've had to really work hard on. And listen, I'm still not perfect at that. That yeah, I find it quite difficult to get to that edginess of going, no, hang on a minute, that's not what we agreed. This is the way we go. I mean, I've become firmer. I mean, listen, and if I'm really passionate about it, that's quite easy for me to do. I think it's sometimes on the edge stuff, where it's harder when you think, oh, do I bother rocking the boat on this one or do we just let it go? But actually the thing I've learned is the longer you let it go, the worse it generally gets. So it's better to lean into it.
Yeah. And those hidden issues, I find they fester and they fester.
Yeah. Well,
As it's not a matter if they will come up, it's when, and the longer they wait, the worse it is.
yeah.
Um, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit because your title right now is Group Brand and Culture Director at the Reece Group.
Yeah.
But actually, that's one of them. You've now also entered into the world of marketing agencies because you're leading breakthrough innovation at Reece as well. What is that? What
Yeah.
is breakthrough? Tell us about that.
So Reece is an interesting place and very clever at the way that it's looked at its strategy, but innovation has been at the heart of kind of Reece's approach for, I'd say, a good 20 years. And um, about 8 or 9 years ago, from a strategic perspective, Reece really wanted to embed the role of kind of creativity and strategy within its business. And they've been working with an agency called Trout, their marketing agency, for about 25 years. And they were like, well, we think creativity is really important, so we'll buy them. And so that was kind of the beginning of of the Breakthrough Innovation Group, it started with Trout. So Trout looks after Reece, but we also have other external clients, particularly in the trade and built environment area, because that's obviously where our speciality and differentiation is. Um, we've also got now, since then, we've built out a venture studio called Superseed, which is looking at trade and innovation tech. We've got a year or so ago, we bought Shadow Boxer and Southpaw, which is a digital and web design agency. And again, they're helping us accelerate our digital journey at Reece. But also, we are creating beautiful websites and lovely digital products for lots of different types of customers externally as well. And what's been really interesting about that journey of big is it's all about kind of bringing the outside in. I think the bigger and more complex organizations you can get kind of wedded down with bureaucracy and more of a kind of the NBA approach to strategy. And I think having Reece owning the Breakthrough Innovation Group means that we can really keep things as simple as possible by using design thinking approach to solve business problems. And the role of kind of brand strategy and business strategy working together. So yes, about listen, earlier, well, it was earlier last year. I was I got the lovely opportunity to not only kind of wear my hat in Reece, but also drive the bus for the Breakthrough Innovation Group, or BIG, which has been a wild ride because I've never run agencies before, so I've been learning lots. But creativity has always been a really important part of the way that I think about work. So it's kind of, I'm in my happy place with my happy people as well. So that's a lot of fun.
So what's that been like? Because when you were doing brand and culture, like those are some areas you've worked in before.
Yeah.
Now you're running agencies you haven't worked in before.
Hmm.
What's that been like? Because I suspect you're coming in and you're not afraid of saying I don't know, but you've got people now that are being led by you, and they might be going, "What does she know about this?"
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I think it's really then going, well, what are the skills that I can bring to this role that enables us to create something great? And I think one one of my key things that I can bring out of having worked at Reece for 7 years is trade and industry knowledge. So one of the big things that we should be able to bring is accelerated value back to Reece, but also for our other clients that are working in the trade and built environment. So that's something I'm really passionate about, and the role of the trade industry in society. And I think we kind of want to be really proud of being at the kind of cutting edge of what's happening in the industry as well. Also, then how to navigate our biggest client, but also our owner, because I've got, I know who's who in the zoo, and I've got great relationships in the business. So that's something that I can add value too. And also, absolutely take the responsibility that we have a role in big to make Reece great as well, and how we can be thinking differently and bringing a nice healthy tension into the business. And then listen, my whole background's been kind of brand and marketing. So while I haven't necessarily grown up in agency, I've worked with agencies my whole career, really. So it's not like it's completely new. Um, the models
You got some street cred.
actually do. Oh, well, I mean, I wouldn't say I've got street cred, but I certainly kind of understand it. So I think that helps. And have always loved the role of how you think differently and how you can bring creativity into business. And how that often brings much better cut through in the way that you bring your work to life as well. So yes, it's an interesting portfolio. Never a dull moment.
No, it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like, yeah, you've had, I just look at your career and you've had a number of different roles. And I reckon there's a little bit of, right, we need something done here. There's an opportunity, there's a problem. Who can fix it? Well, let's go to Lizzy. Um, all right, I want to bring it home just with
Yeah.
2 or 3 questions, just kind of little, not quite just one word answers, but
Okay.
just kind of what comes to mind first.
Hmm.
What's a belief that you hold about leadership that might go against the grain?
Oh, if it goes against the grain. Um, well, I mean, I think my grounding piece around leadership is always be yourself. So you don't need to adapt to the environment. If that's actually what you have to do, that means that probably that culture isn't right for you. You haven't found your your place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, of course you need to adapt how you approach different things, but I think you can always do that from a place of authenticity, and that's really important to me.
That reminds me of a quote you shared with me once, but it was an Oscar Wilde quote. Be yourself because everybody's already taken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I've got a mug with that on, which I drink tea out of.
Like Oscar Wilde slash Lizzy Geremia. Man, I've got to ask this one, of course. When you hear phrase teams that swear by each other, not about each other, what does that look like in your world?
I feel like that that's kind of, and not to sound crass, but that's kind of like you walk in and the vibe in the room is we're all here to make a difference and work together to get shit done and have fun along the way. I think it's just that if you know that you're working in a team where everyone's got each other's back, and when that happens, that's just magic because work just becomes so much easier and joyful, I suppose, in terms of the way that you're approaching things. It doesn't feel like work; it feels like fun.
Yeah. Right. And last one for you. If there's one message or piece of advice that you would give to your daughters about leadership that you think every leader should hear, what's that one piece of advice?
Oh God, I need just some time to think about that. I think it's stay true to your values and who you are. Um, I think that's really important. That you kind of really know. And I mean, obviously, I mean, I've got two teenage daughters, um, and I'll often say that to them in terms of, do you feel like you did the right thing in terms of how you acted? And if you do, then that's great. And if you don't, then what have you learned about it? And you can feel that, I think. So yeah, I think that's understand what your values are, have that knowledge, and stick to them.
Awesome. I love this. Not surprisingly, the energy that's come through this talk, um, the importance, and just to show not only just how important, but what can happen when you do back yourself and you keep what's important to you at the front. And I love the openness, Lizzie. I just get the real you, um, and that just feels like a perfect place to finish up. Uh, Thanks for joining us on Teams That Swear. It's been good. I know our conversations will continue, but again, thanks on behalf of everybody who's going to listen to this and take away something. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Adrian.
Hey there, it's Adrian again. This time a few days later after I spoke with Lizzie. Since then, I've had a chance to listen to the chat again, and upon reflection, what stood out to me was how grounded our conversation was. Lizzie doesn't try to give perfect answers, she just gave real ones. The kind that come from somebody who's been the outlier, somebody who's made soft power work, and not just somebody who's read about it. Now, before I share 3 practical things that you can do with your team based on the chat with Lizzie, can I ask a small favor? If you're enjoying Teams That Swear, hit follow or subscribe. It only takes 2 seconds, but it helps me keep bringing you real conversations with leaders you won't find on every podcast. I think the more this grows, the more that we can dig into the stuff that actually helps teams work better. Okay, thank you for that. Now, here are 3 things that you can try with your team based on what Lizzie shared. The first one was around calling things early. I'll give you, I don't know, a phrase that you can use When you sense that something's off, whether it's a missed deadline or weird tension, the key is not to wait. You can either ask this to the team or teach person one-on-one. Hey, can we pause for a second? Is there something we need to name here? I said something is off and I need to know if it's just me. When you use this approach, you'll build trust faster than letting silence fester around. Now, I thought this was kind of interesting as well. As a kid, Lizzy loved the performing arts. But when it came to leadership, her advice was quite the opposite. She talked about don't act the part, just be yourself. Here's a way to get some great feedback from your team. Ask them, when do you feel like I'm leading at my best? Their responses will be a great signal rather than trying to lead louder than everybody else. And I'd say the third thing that really stood out to me that I think you could use is around making confidence visible for each person in your team. So you could do this exercise either one-on-one or with the group. But ask them 2 questions. First one is, when do you feel most sure of yourself at work? Hear what they have to say. And then ask them the second question, when do you find yourself second-guessing it? These 2 questions can unlock some serious insight for you and, more importantly, for your team. I suggest giving one of these a go, perhaps treat it like an experiment and see what happens. Cheers. Oh, and I almost forgot about this. My marketing team would crack it if I didn't say this. If you're listening and thinking that your team isn't 100% firing on all cylinders, maybe you've just gone through a restructure, or maybe you've just taken on a new team, I can help you and your group do more of the good kind of swearing and truly shine. Whether you need clear language, better alignment, stronger trust, or just team dynamics that actually work, please reach out. My contact details are in the notes, or you can look me up online. That's Adrian Balarjan, spelled Bail, B-A-I-L, large, on. You'll find everything you need there. Cheers again.